Hi, our names are Ada Mammo.
Angelina Cain.
Nicole Cummings.
Laurel, Molloy.
and Arshiya Sheik.
Today we will be discussing Masha Gensen's Words Will Break Cement, The Passion of the Pussy Riot, for those who have not read the book.
Marsha Gessen's Words Will Break Cement, The Passion of Pussy Riot utilizes the punk art collective to highlight intersectionality in women and queer rights throughout varying time periods. Art activism, or artivism, can range anywhere from political cartoons to visual displays, challenging the status quo and advocating for change. A popular example of artivism in the US was Keith Haring's cartoons that displayed dancing figures that advocated for AIDS awareness. Art activism is helpful for informing the public about serious issues in a way that engages them holistically. It engages them visually, physically, and emotionally. Using this method prompts people to actually take action. Punk performances, like the one described in the book, are often associated with being alternative or deviating from what is considered to be the norm. They don't conform to typical standards and typically have underlying messages that ask you to examine the world around you, whether that be political, financial, about the environment, etc. This book helps the reader understand how impactful art activism and punk prayer can really be. It opens the eyes, especially of those who may be so caught up in their own daily routine, they forget to look around and acknowledge the disparities that are happening.
Thanks for that insight, Angelina. I actually think that reminds me of a few quotes that stood out to me, and I'm going to share those with you guys if that's okay. So the first one I have is queer theory and feminist theory was teaching Nadia, and Nadia was teaching Kat that things should be done differently, not just differently from the way they were done in Russia, but also differently from the way they had been done in Vienna. It had been a group of men aided by their wives. It had also been a group in which the women had jealously watched their husbands. Both conditions now felt a bit embarrassing, as did the serious regard Vienna accorded itself. The more Kat and Nadia occasional others argued, this method of creating actions had remained unchanged. The more they agreed that their new strategy should not involve art with a capital A. Indeed, the fact that it was art should be concealed by a spirit of fun and mischief. However, whatever they did should be easily understood, and if it was not, it should be simply explained. If only Russia had something like these groups, or anything of riot girl culture, or really any legacy of 20th century feminism in its cultural background, but it did not. They had to make it up. And that was page 25 through 26. And
Nicole,
Eden, do you have
I,
anything you'd like to add?
oh, sorry. Nicole, I did actually have something I wanted to add. You know, something that I loved about Masha Gensen is, she's committed to this topic to build a lasting feminist legacy for Russia through more accessible and relatable forms of protests, within their restrictive culture and political climate. This quote, we recognize that Nadia and Kat distanced themselves from Voyana, a male led group to divert away from the traditional form of protest. Because, the purpose of the Pussy Riot is to creatively protest queer and feminist rights. Did you have any more quotes you wanted to share?
Yeah, thanks for that. I have two more actually. So the first one is, you don't think I have a good sense of how this state works? I have intimate knowledge now, and I really understand how bureaucrats work. And the more I learn, the less hope I have. It's all based on a set of blind beliefs that are impossible to shake, even using an individual approach. Their very concept of state power, they see it as a static structure that is unchangeable by its very nature. The same goes for the way the penal colony is constituted. And art. No one wants to listen. They tell me to go get lost. They are afraid of new information, even though all I'm doing is trying to talk to them about art, which I try to do all the time. And that was page 233 to 234. And then I have one more quote. Part of what theory promised was an idea that another world was still possible, not in some mythical afterlife, but on this earth now, that the life around me did not have to be the only one. There was no fixed human nature except to take and shape what was around us. And almost everything around us was now the result of some sort of human endeavor, like the soy formula I'd been nursed on. We were culture and culture, and artificiality and engineering all the way down. What was made could thus be unmade. And that was 33. So for me, I think all three of these quotes kind of have a common theme. And I think that theme is how fragile the structure of government and authority is when challenged by women. And I think that this is what Gessen was trying to ultimately convey when she wrote this book, that all forms of societal structures, no matter the society or time period, have the capacity to oppress women and to be dismantled by women.
Um, Nicole, that's interesting that you say that because, you know, the importance throughout Words Will Break Cement, Gessen emphasizes the importance of artivism and how it plays a vital role in Pussy Riot's protests against the Russian government. This approach has inspired countless acts of resistance, including parallels today in Ukraine's response to the ongoing Russian invasion. Just as in 2012, we see similar issues with authoritarianism, censorship, government oppression, and harsh consequences for dissenting. In a powerful display of defiance, some Ukrainians have used fashion as a medium for protest. A great example of this is the London Fashion Week last spring. Ukrainian designers displayed a Ukrainian flag to mark 1 year since Russia's invasion, highlighting the resilience of their nation. In solidarity, we see artists of all forms, from fashion designers to musicians and visual artists, have united globally to bring media attention to Ukraine's fight, making prominent how art plays a major role in movements for justice and freedom. Laurel, I heard that you wanted to share some things you loved about the book.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for that. Those are some really cool points. I just want to draw your attention to another excerpt specific of the punk prayer. They sang, "The head of the KGB, their chief saint, leads protesters to prison under escort. Don't upset his saintship, ladies. Stick to making love and babies. Crap, crap, this godliness crap. Crap, crap, this holiness crap." One of the things that stood out to me and felt particularly important was that of the punk prayer itself. This prayer was chanted and sung in the Moscow Cathedral on February 21st, 2012 by the Pussy Riot. This prayer was directly sung to bring up gay rights and how the government was lying and chaining the people of Russia down. They sang, "Gay pride's chained and in detention," in the prayer, calling out the withholding of information that Russia's government was implicit in. This prayer was an act against the oppression of the Russian government, sung proudly in public. Pussy Riot was tried for religious hatred because of this punk prayer. They got 2 years in prison for this voicing out against the government. These parts of the punk prayer are so powerful because the punk prayer itself was an artistic voice of the trodden on and forgotten about, screaming out that they are powerful and not alone. And one more excerpt I'd like to draw attention to is that bless our festering bastard boss, let black cars parade the cross, the missionaries in class for cash, meet him there, pay his stash.
Thank you so much, Laurel. The punk prayer really was impactful and stuck out to me as well when I was reading the book. Marsha Gessen's Words Will Break Cement, The Passion of a Pussy Riot, targets such a diverse audience, including activists, scholars, and even general readers who are interested in feminist movements, as well as LGBTQ rights. Gessen talks about empowerment through art, which is something I haven't seen super often, but she talks about the power of art as a platform for expression and activism. Also, looking from a feminist perspective and an LGBTQ representation standpoint, she showcases how groups challenge patriarchal norms in Russian society and how LGBTQ rights are interwoven with broader struggles for freedom and justice, more than just on a surface level. I also enjoyed reading about trans inclusivity and how Genson acknowledges the need for trans liberation as a part of the overarching fight against oppression, and how intersectionality allows these groups to be interconnected within each other and form a collective resistance that amplifies their voices.
I really liked the points that you brought up, Arshiya. I really enjoyed the perspective of intersectionality throughout the book. I feel like that's a really important thing to address, especially in this growing day and age where intersectionality is something that is very important.
So something one of my favorite characters was Maria, and I kind of loved how, although when she did go to prison she was scared, but something I observed about her is how tactful she is. She really observes the environment she's in, and although she's intimidated, she doesn't try to show that to her peers. um, Showing a form of strength. And I think it's a little funny too how the media kind of painted the band as witches. And that's just a theme we see throughout history when feminists are fighting for their rights and women are fighting for a place uh, in, whether it be their social life or economic life or something. uh, they paint them as witches to try and make that as a negative thing. But in this case, I feel like, witches is a form of, pride, a form of resilience. So,
Kind of to connect and build off of the theme of witches, when I was reading that part specifically, it kind of took me back to when I was in high school and I was learning about the Salem witch trials that happened like not too far from here in Salem, Virginia. Not Salem,
Salem, Massachusetts.
Salem, Massachusetts. Sorry. It kind of took me back to, learning about that and how women were they were seen as witches, they were burned and killed. So it was nice to see how they took this symbol of witches and kind of changed how I viewed it as I did when I was learning about the Salem witch trials.
yes, and something similar to that is, if we refer to the book, Nurses, Midwives, and Witches, it's just a similar form of women in healthcare uh, trying to fight for the same thing. So, you know, media tries to use witches as such a negative connotation when in reality it's something very powerful and amazing.
I actually,
Yeah.
oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I actually think that I agree with you, Eden, about how media paints women in general. And I think that Justin was kind of, well, not very ahead of the time period when writing this book, because I think it's still true today. I think not just in regards to witches being something, I think even the term witches, or even during the Salem witch trials, they used witches as something to be dangerous, or like the idea that a woman could be a witch as dangerous. Because I think that in a way, I think patriarchally, like men are scared of capabilities that women have. And I think that was even shown through this book, like how everyone was so scared about what Wina could do, and how powerful Wina was. So yeah, I think that's actually something I was gonna say earlier, was that I didn't really have a favorite character, but I was more really inspired by Wina.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of just like highlighting of the power of woman was really cool. And like every single character, like, or person, they came out and they did this like artistic expression of what they believed. And like that's not something to be taken light of, because so many people, even nowadays in Russia, are trying to speak out against their government and like against the Ukrainian war and everything. And there's so many people who are being silenced, being put into prison, being killed. And it's not a small thing to voice those thoughts and to stand up. And so I was really impressed by all of the women in this book because of that, just like power and willingness to stand up for themselves. I thought that was a really cool and empowering just message to read about.
This book has allowed us to explore themes and become more educated on subjects that we wouldn't typically examine in a Western education. By broadening our understanding of global feminism and the use of art activism, we're not only strengthening our skills as students, but we're strengthening our skills as activists and advocates for those who may not have a voice to advocate. I really enjoyed reading this book. I know everyone else in this podcast did. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. And thank you to Marsha Gessen for writing this piece and opening up this conversation that we were able to have.
Thanks,
Thanks for listening.
Much, guys.